On a Sunday morning in Charleston, South Carolina, a woman smiled for the camera. Her name was Elaine Whitmore. She was the pastor's wife. She posted a video at 1:47 p.m. By 6 o'clock that evening, she was gone, vanished, no goodbye, no trace. But the video remained. And when people watched it again, they saw something they'd missed. 2 seconds. 2 extra seconds that changed everything. Charleston, South Carolina. Population, 12,000. Church attendance, 92%. Crime rate, virtually zero. It's a place where everyone knows your name, where doors stay unlocked, where faith is the foundation. At the center of it all stands Grace Community Church. Red brick, white steeple, a bronze bell that rings every Sunday at 9:30. And for 16 years, Elaine Whitmore stood beside her husband, Pastor David, as the perfect pastor's wife. Elaine was born Elaine Harper in Savannah, Georgia. Youngest of 3 sisters, her mother taught Sunday school for 42 years. Elaine had a voice people remembered, clear, pure, the kind that made grown men cry during Christmas service. She sang at weddings and funerals across the county. People requested her specifically. She met David at a church conference in Atlanta in 2008. She was 22, leading worship. He was 26, giving a sermon about faith and doubt. They talked for hours. 6 months later, they married, they moved to Charleston. David became youth pastor, then senior pastor by 2013, at just 31. The church grew. Attendance doubled. David became prominent, city council meetings, graduations, magazine features, and Elaine was always there, organizing events, leading Bible studies, baking pies, remembering birthdays. People called them the perfect couple. But those close to Elaine noticed changes. She grew quieter, tired, she stopped singing. Her sister, Rachel, worried. Every time I asked if she was okay, she'd say she was blessed. But I could hear it in her voice. She was lying. By 2024, they'd been married 16 years. They lived on Pinewood Drive in a modest house with a porch no one sat on. They had no children. Elaine had suffered 3 miscarriages, 2010, 2012, 2015. After the third, she stopped talking about it. When people asked about starting a family, she'd smile. God's timing is perfect. But inside, something was breaking. Sunday, April 14th, 2024. Elaine woke at 6:30, made coffee, read her Bible at the kitchen table. In her leather journal, she wrote, "I'm tired. I don't know how much longer I can keep doing this." She wore her favorite yellow sundress with white flowers. Bought it at a thrift shop for $12. David came down at 7:15. They drove to church together. First service at 9:30, second at 11. Between services, fellowship in the basement, coffee, donuts, lemonade. Elaine stood behind a table pouring lemonade, smiling at everyone. At 1:47 p.m., most people had left. She pulled out her phone, opened Instagram, switched to the church account. David put his arm around her waist. She pressed record. 11 seconds. "We had such a beautiful service today." Feeling so blessed, he kissed her temple. She laughed, posted it, then put the phone away, picked up the empty pitcher, and walked toward the kitchen. That was the last time anyone saw Elaine Whitmore. The person who called 911 wasn't David. It was Rachel, Elaine's sister, 2 hours away in Columbia. She'd been texting and calling all afternoon. Nothing. At 5:30 p.m., she called David. "Where's Elaine?" Long pause. "I thought she was with you." Rachel hung up and called police. When Sheriff Tom Brennan arrived at 6:15 p.m., David was sitting on the porch, calm. He said Elaine needed air after fellowship, that she'd taken her car, that he assumed she'd gone to see Rachel. She does that when she needs space. Detective Laura Hayes found Elaine's car in the church lot. Keys in ignition, phone on the seat, purse on the floor, but no Elaine. To understand what happened to Elaine, you have to understand Charleston, or more specifically, Grace Community Church. For 20 years, it's been the center of everything. Weddings, funerals, town meetings, food drives. And at the center of the church is Pastor David Whitmore. 42 years old, charismatic, educated, theology degree from Duke. He grew up in Charleston, left for college, and came back to lead. People describe it as a calling. He came back to save us, they say. Detective Laura Hayes was assigned to the case within hours. She's 34, grew up in Charleston, attended Grace Community since childhood. She knows these people. She was baptized in the same pool as Elaine, sang in the same choir, and that made everything harder. Her boss, Sheriff Tom Brennan, is 58, a deacon at the church, a close friend of David's. When Laura was assigned, Tom pulled her aside. "I know David," he said. "He's a good man. This is probably a misunderstanding. Maybe Elaine had a breakdown. Let's not ruin his reputation over assumptions," Laura nodded. But she didn't agree, because she'd seen something in David's eyes during questioning. Not the fear of a man who lost his wife, the fear of a man who lost control. Laura began interviewing church members. Margaret Patterson, 65, had known Elaine for years. She was lovely, Margaret said. Always kind, but she changed. Used to be so full of life. Recently, she seemed tired, like she was carrying something heavy. James Cooper, 38, youth leader, defended David passionately. "Pastor David is the best man I know. He saved my marriage. I can't believe people are suspecting him." Elaine probably just needed space. But Sarah Jenkins, 29, a friend of Elaine's, was more careful. "Elaine told me once she felt like she was living in a fishbowl. Everyone watching, everyone judging. She said it was exhausting, being perfect all the time." I asked what she meant. She smiled and changed the subject. The more Laura dug, the more inconsistencies appeared. David claimed Elaine left around 2 p.m. saying she needed air. But 3 witnesses saw her at 1:50 p.m. still cleaning up in the fellowship hall. No one saw her leave the building. The church has security cameras, but footage from that afternoon was corrupted. Just that afternoon. The IT volunteer, a 19-year-old named Tyler, couldn't explain it. "I don't know what happened," he said. "The files just stopped." Laura requested David's phone records. He hesitated, then agreed. "I have nothing to hide." But when the records arrived, there was a gap. Between 1:30 p.m. and 3:00 p.m., no calls, no texts. "I was busy with fellowship," David explained. "I wasn't on my phone." Laura checked with the phone company. During that window, David's phone pinged off a tower 3 miles from the church, near Folly Beach. When Laura asked him about it, David paused. "I drove out there after Elaine left. To clear my head. I forgot to mention it, but no one saw him leave either." Then there was Rachel, Elaine's sister. She arrived in Charleston the night Elaine disappeared. She was devastated but also angry. "I've been worried about Elaine for years," she told Laura. "She wasn't herself." She stopped calling, stopped visiting. When I asked if everything was okay with David, she'd get quiet. One time she almost said something. We were on the phone and she said, "Rachel, if anything ever happens to me," and then David came into the room. She changed the subject immediately. I knew something was wrong. I just didn't know how wrong. Rachel had tried to convince Elaine to leave David once, 2 years earlier. I asked her why she stayed. She said, "Where would I go? Everyone here thinks we're perfect. If I leave, they'll blame me. They'll say I destroyed his ministry." She felt trapped, not by locks or threats, by expectation. Mark Ellison wasn't from Charleston. He was a freelance investigative journalist from Atlanta, 36 years old, known for stories local news wouldn't touch. When he heard about Elaine's disappearance, something didn't sit right. A pastor's wife vanishes, and the town just prays? He started asking questions. And the more he asked, the less sense it made. Mark arrived in Charleston on day 4. He checked into a motel on Highway 17, started reading everything he could find. Church bulletins, social media posts, local news articles. He noticed patterns. Elaine had stopped posting on her personal Instagram 6 months earlier. Her last post was a sunset with the caption, "Even the darkest nights end." After that, only posts from the church account. Mark reached out to Sarah Jenkins, Elaine's friend. They met at a diner outside town. Sarah was nervous. "I shouldn't be talking to you," she said. "People here don't like outsiders asking questions." But she told him anyway, about how Elaine had confided in her a year ago, about feeling invisible, about how David's ambitions had consumed everything. She said she felt like a prop, Sarah explained. Like her only purpose was to make him look good. She wanted to sing again, to lead worship. But David said it was better if she focused on supporting him. She stopped being Elaine and became the pastor's wife. Mark also spoke to Tyler, the IT volunteer. Tyler was scared. "I didn't mean to corrupt the footage," he said. but someone asked me to delete it. I thought it was a mistake, so I just corrupted the files instead. I didn't want to get in trouble." When Mark asked who asked him, Tyler went pale. "I can't say." "They'll know it was me," Mark pressed. Tyler finally whispered, "It was one of the deacons. He said Pastor David wanted the files gone because they showed something embarrassing." I didn't ask what. Meanwhile, Laura was building her case. The divorce attorney in Columbia confirmed Elaine had contacted him 3 weeks before her disappearance. She wanted to file for divorce, but was terrified of the fallout. She said her husband was beloved, the attorney told Laura. She said if she left, the entire community would turn against her. She was trying to figure out how to do it quietly. The attorney also mentioned something else. Elaine had asked about restraining orders. I asked if she felt unsafe. She said she didn't know. She said David had never hurt her physically, but she felt controlled, monitored, like she couldn't breathe. Then there was the money. $10,000 in cash deposited into the church account 3 days before Elaine disappeared. No name, no receipt. Just a note for God's work. Laura traced the deposit to a local bank. The teller remembered the transaction. A man came in, mid-40s, well-dressed. He didn't give a name. Just handed over the cash and left. The description matched David. When Laura confronted him, David's lawyer was present. "My client has no knowledge of this donation," the lawyer said. But David's face told a different story. Mark dug deeper. He found out that 3 months earlier, the church had taken out a loan for renovations. $50,000, but the renovations never happened. The money went into an escrow account, then disappeared. Mark traced it to a personal account under David's name. When he published the findings on his blog, the town erupted. Half the congregation defended David. "He's being framed," they said. "This is a witch hunt." The other half started asking questions. Where is Elaine? Why isn't David looking for her? Why is he lawyering up instead of grieving? On day 7, Rachel held a press conference. She stood outside the church holding a photo of Elaine. "My sister is missing," she said, voice breaking. "And instead of searching for her, this community is protecting a man who won't even tell the truth about where he was when she disappeared." Elaine was afraid. She wanted to leave, and now she's gone. "Please, if anyone knows anything, come forward." The press conference was broadcast statewide. Tips started pouring in, but none of them led anywhere. Elaine had simply vanished. The video resurfaced on April 18th, 4 days after Elaine vanished. Someone re-uploaded it to a Facebook group called Find Elaine Whitmore. But this version was different. It was 2 seconds longer. In those 2 seconds, after David kisses her temple and the original video ends, Elaine turns her head, looks directly at the camera, and mouths something. No sound, just her lips moving. The group exploded. "Well, what is she saying?" Why was this cut from the original? Who uploaded this? Mark downloaded the video immediately. He sent it to a forensic lip reader in Boston, a specialist who'd worked on criminal cases. The response came back in 24 hours. According to the lip reader, Elaine was saying, "Help me." 2 words. Clear as day. Mark published the finding. The story went national. CNN, Fox, MSNBC. Pastor's wife mouthed, "Help me," in final video. David's lawyer issued a statement. "This is speculation and defamation. The video has clearly been manipulated. We are exploring legal action." But the damage was done. Public opinion shifted. Even those who defended David started to doubt. Laura obtained a warrant to search the church. She brought a team of forensic specialists. They started in David's office. Files, computer, phone records. Then they moved to the sanctuary, the fellowship hall. The kitchen, nothing. But when they reached the basement, they found a locked door, a storage room. David claimed he didn't have the key. Laura broke it down. Inside was a small room with a desk, a chair, and a laptop. The laptop was password protected. Laura's tech specialist cracked it in 3 hours. What they found was chilling. The laptop contained hundreds of video files, recordings of private counseling sessions. David had been filming members of the congregation without their knowledge. Sessions where people confessed marital problems, financial struggles, addictions, affairs, all recorded, all stored. Laura's hands shook as she scrolled through the files. "Why would he do this?" she whispered. The tech specialist had a theory: control. If you know everyone's secrets, they can't turn against you. But one file stood out. It was labeled E-Final, dated April 10th, 4 days before Elaine disappeared. Laura clicked play. The video showed Elaine sitting in the same chair, in the same room. She looked exhausted, eyes red from crying, hair pulled back. She was talking to someone off camera. The voice was David's. "Elaine, we've been over this. You can't leave. Think about what it would do to the church, to my ministry, to us." Elaine's voice was barely audible. "I can't do this anymore, David. I'm suffocating. I feel like I'm disappearing." David's tone hardened. "You're being dramatic. You have everything. A beautiful home, a purpose. People look up to you." Elaine shook her head. "They don't see me. They see what you want them to see." David leaned into frame. His face was cold. "If you leave, Elaine, you'll have nothing. No one will believe you. They'll think you're unstable. They'll blame you for destroying everything I've built." Elaine looked directly at the camera then, as if she knew it was recording. Her next words were slow, deliberate. "If something happens to me, don't let them call it an accident." The video ended. Laura sat in silence. She replayed it 3 times. Then she called the district attorney. "We need to arrest David Whitmore, now." But there was a problem. The video wasn't enough. It showed manipulation, control, maybe coercion, but it didn't prove murder. They didn't even have a body. The DA was hesitant. "Bring me more," he said. "Bring me proof she's dead, or proof he killed her. Until then, it's just a missing person case." Mark, meanwhile, was following the anonymous tip. He went to the church late at night, climbed through a basement window. He found the room Laura's team had already searched. But he noticed something they'd missed, a loose floorboard in the corner. He pried it up. Underneath was a small metal box. Inside the box were documents, a life insurance policy on Elaine, $2 million, taken out 6 months earlier, beneficiary David Whitmore. Also in the box, Elaine's journal, the real one, not the one found in her house. Mark flipped through it, page after page of pain. "I don't know who I am anymore. He watches me constantly. I'm afraid of what he'll do if I leave." The final entry was dated April 13th, the day before she disappeared. "Tomorrow I'm going to tell him I'm filing for divorce. Rachel said I can stay with her. I'm terrified, but I can't live like this anymore. If you're reading this, and I'm not here, please know I didn't run away, and it wasn't an accident." Mark called Laura immediately. She arrived within 20 minutes. They read the journal together under flashlight. When they finished, Laura looked at Mark. "We have to find her body. Without it, he walks." Mark nodded. "Then let's find it." The dress was found on April 20th, tangled in marsh grass near Folly Beach, 3 miles from where David's phone had pinged that Sunday afternoon. It was yellow with small white flowers. Elaine's dress. Forensic analysis confirmed it. The blood on the fabric matched her type. Abe negative, rare, only 4% of the population. But it wasn't enough blood to indicate a fatal wound, just enough to suggest violence. A struggle. Something had happened to Elaine in that dress, and someone had tried to hide it. Laura Hayes organized a massive search operation. Cadaver dogs trained to detect human remains. Dive teams equipped for murky coastal waters. Over 200 volunteers from across the state, many who'd never met Elaine, but felt compelled to help. They combed through miles of marsh thick with cordgrass and mud that swallowed boots whole. The heat was brutal, 95 degrees, humidity making it feel like 110. Mosquitoes swarmed, but no one quit. For 3 days they searched, and on the 3rd day, near an abandoned boat dock, locales called the Old Fisher Place, the cadaver dogs alerted. Elaine's body was buried in a shallow grave, less than 2 feet deep, covered with branches and marsh debris. She'd been there since April 14th, 6 days in the South Carolina heat. The medical examiner, Dr. Patricia Vance, conducted the autopsy with Laura present. The findings were definitive. Cause of death, blunt force trauma to the head, multiple strikes. The skull showed 3 distinct impact points, indicating repeated blows. Defensive wounds on Elaine's hands and forearms, bruises, lacerations, showed she'd tried to protect herself. She'd fought back. Time of death was estimated between 2 p.m. and 4 p.m. on April 14th. the exact window when David claimed he was driving to clear his head, when his phone pinged near Folly Beach, when no one could account for his whereabouts, but there was more. Dr. Vance found soil under Elaine's fingernails, dark, clay-rich soil that didn't match the sandy marsh where she was buried. It matched samples taken from the garden behind Grace Community Church. Elaine had been killed there, in a place she'd tended for years, planting flowers for Easter services and fall festivals. Then her body had been moved. The logistics alone required planning, strength, time. This wasn't a crime of passion. This was calculated. Crime scene investigators returned to the church with new urgency. They used luminol in the kitchen, the fellowship hall, the garden. In the church kitchen, behind a large storage cabinet that held communion supplies, they found it, blood spatter on the wall, faint but unmistakable under UV light. Someone had cleaned it, but blood is stubborn. It leaves traces. They also found a single hair, blonde, stuck in a crack in the cabinet. DNA analysis confirmed it was Elaine's, and on the cabinet itself, they lifted a partial fingerprint. It belonged to David Whitmore. Then there was the murder weapon. Investigators had searched the church before but hadn't known what they were looking for. Now they did. In the storage closet near the altar, they found a brass candlestick holder, ornate and heavy, at least 5 pounds. It had been polished recently, but luminol doesn't lie. Under the chemical's glow, the base of the candlestick lit up like a beacon. Blood, Elaine's blood, and etched into the brass, too faint to see with the naked eye but clear under magnification, were microscopic traces of skin and hair. The forensic report was unambiguous. This candlestick had struck Elaine Whitmore's skull at least 3 times. On April 23rd, 9 days after Elaine disappeared, Detective Laura Hayes and a team of officers arrived at the Whitmore residence with an arrest warrant. David was in the living room, sitting on the couch, watching the news coverage of the search. He didn't resist. He stood up slowly, hands already raised, as if he'd been expecting this. "I want my lawyer," he said. Those were his only words. Laura read him his rights. David Whitmore, age 42, beloved pastor, pillar of the community, was charged with first-degree murder. The bail hearing was a spectacle. The courtroom was packed, standing room only. Half the attendees wore shirts that read, "Justice for Elaine." The other half wore shirts that read, "Free Pastor David." The prosecution argued David was a flight risk with means and motive. The defense argued he was a respected community leader with no prior record, deeply rooted in Charleston, with no reason to flee. The judge set bail at $5 million. Within 48 hours, Grace Community Church had raised it. Anonymous donations poured in. Some members mortgaged their homes. "We believe in him," said James Cooper, the youth leader, in a televised interview. "This is a witch hunt. Pastor David would never hurt anyone." But others were starting to doubt. Margaret Patterson, who'd defended him so fiercely at first, stopped attending church. She didn't say why. She just stopped. The evidence kept mounting. Financial records showed David had taken out a $2 million life insurance policy on Elaine 6 months before her death. The agent who sold it remembered the transaction clearly. "Mrs. Whitmore wasn't present," he testified later. "Mr. Whitmore said she was too busy with church activities." He signed on her behalf. "I thought it was odd, but he was a pastor. I trusted him." The policy had a clause, double indemnity if death was accidental, $4 million if Elaine died in an accident. That detail would haunt the trial. Laura also uncovered something else, a pattern. 3 other women had left Grace Community Church in the past 5 years under mysterious circumstances. One, a worship leader named Jennifer Cole, had filed a restraining order against David in 2021, claiming he'd become obsessive after she declined his spiritual counseling. The order was granted, but later dropped after Jennifer moved out of state. She refused to testify, afraid of retaliation. Another woman, Beth Santos, had confided in her sister that David had made her uncomfortable, that he'd recorded their private conversations without consent. She left the church quietly, never pressing charges. The pattern was there, hidden under layers of reverence and fear. Mark Ellison published these findings in a detailed investigative piece titled The Man Behind the Pulpit. It went viral. National media descended on Charleston, CNN, NBC, Fox News. The story became a national conversation about power, faith, and accountability. Some defended David as a man of God being persecuted. Others saw him as a predator hiding behind a collar. Charleston was no longer a quiet town. It was a battlefield. In jail, David maintained his composure. He read the Bible daily. He received visitors, loyal congregants who brought him home-cooked meals and prayers. And he gave one interview to a local Christian radio station. In it, he said, "I love my wife. I would never hurt her. The evidence has been twisted. The truth will come out. I have faith that God will vindicate me." His voice was calm, measured, pastoral. To his supporters, it was the voice of an innocent man. To his detractors, it was the voice of a manipulator who'd perfected his mask. Rachel, meanwhile, was falling apart. She'd identified Elaine's body, a task that broke something inside her. "I looked at her face," Rachel told Laura later, "and I didn't recognize her. The sister I knew was gone. What was left was just evidence." Rachel threw herself into planning the funeral, into working with prosecutors, into anything that kept her moving. Because if she stopped, she'd collapse. And Elaine needed her to stay standing. After the trial, Charleston was never the same. Grace Community Church split down the middle. Half the congregation left to form a new church across town. The other half stayed, insisting David had been wronged. The church building itself fell into disrepair. Attendance dropped. Donations dried up. Within a year, it closed its doors permanently. The building still stands today, empty and silent. A monument to what happens when image matters more than truth. Laura Hayes left the sheriff's department 6 months after the trial. She said she couldn't continue working under Sheriff Brennan, who'd never fully supported the investigation. She became a private investigator, specializing in cases of domestic abuse and missing persons. "Elaine's case changed me," she told a reporter. "It taught me that the people we trust the most can be the most dangerous, and that we have to listen when someone says they're afraid, even when it doesn't make sense to us." Mark Ellison wrote a book about the case. It became a bestseller. He donated all the proceeds to a foundation Rachel established in Elaine's name. The Elaine Whitmore Foundation provides legal and financial assistance to women trying to leave abusive relationships, particularly within religious communities where leaving is stigmatized. "Elaine couldn't escape," Rachel said at the foundation's launch, "but maybe we can help others who can." Sarah Jenkins, Elaine's friend, started a support group at the new church for women struggling in their marriages. "We were all so focused on being perfect," she said. "We didn't make space for honesty." Elaine felt like she had to suffer in silence because admitting her marriage was failing would make her look weak. "I wish I'd told her it was okay to not be okay. That leaving doesn't make you a failure. That survival is more important than reputation." David Whitmore remains in prison. He still maintains his innocence. He's filed multiple appeals, all denied. Some members of the old congregation write him letters, send him money, visit him. They believe he was framed, that the evidence was planted, that he's a martyr. Others have come to accept the truth. Margaret Patterson, who defended him at first, now volunteers at the Elaine Whitmore Foundation. "I was wrong," she said simply. "I chose loyalty over truth. I chose comfort over justice, and Elaine paid the price." The video, the one with the extra 2 seconds, has been viewed over 50 million times. It's been analyzed, discussed, used in training for law enforcement and domestic violence advocates. Elaine's face, frozen in that moment, mouthing, "Help me," has become a symbol. A reminder that victims often ask for help in ways we don't expect, in ways we might miss if we're not paying attention. Rachel visits Elaine's grave every Sunday. It's in a small cemetery outside Savannah, near where they grew up. The headstone reads, "Elaine Marie Harper Whitmore, beloved sister." Her voice was silenced, but her story lives on. Rachel brings flowers. Sometimes she sings. The hymns Elaine used to sing, "It is well with my soul." Amazing grace. She says it's her way of giving Elaine back her voice. "She spent so many years being told to be quiet," Rachel said, "to smile, to support, to not make waves. I won't let her be silent anymore." And maybe that's the real lesson of Elaine's story. That silence is dangerous. That when we ignore the signs, the exhaustion, the fear, the quiet desperation, we become complicit. That perfection is a cage. That faith without compassion is empty. That the truth, no matter how uncomfortable, is always worth pursuing. Elaine Whitmore deserved better. She deserved to be heard. She deserved to live. And while we can't give her that, we can honor her by making sure her story isn't forgotten. By making sure the next Elaine isn't ignored. If Elaine's story touched you, please take a moment to like this video, follow our channel for more true stories that matter, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Stories like Elaine's remind us why truth matters, why listening matters, and why we can never stop fighting for those who can't fight for themselves. Thank you for watching.